Who's that? Is that Anna Paula?
Yes, that's me.
Hey, how are you?
I'm fine. Okay, let's go, galera. Galera.
Let's go, galera.
Okay, let's go.
Oh, I have mine.
Okay.
Yeah. So, estamos online já no... Yeah. So, welcome, Brett. I'm gonna do a short introduction. So now, welcome the colleagues that are following us online. This session is about entrepreneurial mindset. What we're planning for this next hour 15 minutes is Brett will do a presentation on how he sees entrepreneurial mindset. And Brett, we are working pretty much on the go. Maybe in the middle of your presentation, if you wanna raise the ball, maybe I can jump in and do an interaction with you, questions, and then in the end, we'll open for everybody that is here with us today. We have people from all the participant companies that we showed in the slide of the session. Right. So I will not introduce yourself. I'll let you introduce yourself, okay?
Sure, sounds good.
So, okay, let's move on. Thank you.
Okay. Let me see if I've got slides going here. You all can see my slides now. Oh yeah, I can actually see on my screen that you can see my slides. All right, good morning, everybody. So it is 6:30 in the morning here in California, so it is still dark, but I got up early just for you guys, and I have my coffee right here. So we will we'll do our best to make it through this, even though it's early in the morning in California. So I'm Brett Waters. I've been in Silicon Valley my entire life. I have 3 times I've founded a company, raised venture capital, been a CEO. And today I'm focused on helping other entrepreneurs to thrive and succeed. So I teach entrepreneurship at Stanford University. I coach startup CEOs at Miller Center for Social Entrepreneurship, and I run the Fourthly Startup Accelerator program. So, and I also had the pleasure last month of welcoming on Stanford campus, welcoming a group of executive MBA students from Insper. And we had a very, very fine time in Silicon Valley for a week, the end of September. So Anna Paula asked me this morning to give a talk about entrepreneurial mindset. And you know, I thought we'd kind of explore, is there such a thing as an entrepreneurial mindset? I mean, is there actually some sort of mindset that makes you a successful entrepreneur? It's an interesting question. It's a term, you know, the entrepreneurial mindset is a term that gets tossed around a lot these days, but, you know, what is it exactly? And more importantly, does it even exist? Is there some sort of mindset that will lead you to becoming a successful startup founder, a successful entrepreneur? So I decided when Anna Paula asked me to do this, I decided that I would do a little research project, and I would use my standard research process, which is Google, tacos, books, and wine. So we'll start with the Google part. So, you know, so I Googled entrepreneurial mindset, and this is what Google told me. Entrepreneurial mindset refers to a specific state of mind which orients human conduct toward entrepreneurial activities and outcomes. It's like, well, that's kind of dry and boring and doesn't really tell us very much. So, so then I moved on to the next part of my standard research process. So when the executive MBA students from Insper joined me last month for Silicon Valley Immersion Week, on their very first day, I took them to my favorite taco place. And we enjoyed some excellent tacos at Sancho's Taqueria in Palo Alto. And so these students know that, I'm all about the tacos, and that, I'm lucky to know a lot of great people in Silicon Valley. I am lucky to know a lot of very successful startup founders and a lot of venture capitalists who, their job basically is looking for successful entrepreneurs and looking for the traits that seem to indicate that somebody is going to be a successful entrepreneur and therefore a good investment. And whenever I meet these people for lunch, it's always at Sancho's Taqueria, my favorite taco place in Palo Alto. So I took a variety of high-performing friends of mine out for a taco to ask them what they thought an entrepreneurial mindset is. And my friend Kent, he made this really interesting observation that when he starts a new company, it never occurs to him that he might fail, which is pretty remarkable given the failure rate of startups in general, and in particular, the biotech industry that Kent is in. So Kent made the observation that part of an entrepreneurial mindset is having the confidence that you won't fail, having the confidence to believe that you will figure it out, and that's part of the entrepreneurial mindset, is the confidence that you will find a solution. So then I had a taco with my friend Bob Webster and said, Bob, what's an entrepreneurial mindset? Bob said, well, an entrepreneurial mindset is one which takes risks others won't take to achieve a vision that others don't share. And so this is the risk-taking component, right? That when we think of entrepreneurs, we think of people who are not afraid to take risks because they know that accomplishing great things requires taking some risk. And perhaps most importantly, learning requires some risk, right? There is no way to learn new things without putting yourself out there and exposing yourself to risk. Danielle, very successful venture capitalist. And so I said to Danielle, I said, what is an entrepreneurial mindset? And she said it is one consisting of grit and perseverance while being realistic enough to know when it's time to adapt and change course. So what's interesting about this, she mentions the grit and perseverance, right? Which is definitely part of what we think of when we think of an entrepreneurial mindset, is somebody who will stick with it and has the perseverance to just stick to their vision until it becomes a reality. And yet she then adds on to that you also have to be realistic to know when it's time to adapt and change course. So I think that's an interesting kind of contradiction, that on one hand, we're told that entrepreneurs are the ones who stick to their vision no matter what. But on the other hand, we're told that great entrepreneurs know when to pivot and change course and to accept the fact that they were wrong about a particular assumption, and that rapid pivots, rapid iteration is part of what an entrepreneur has to do. And so I think Danielle puts her finger on this inherent contradiction, that on one hand, you have to have grit and perseverance, but on the other hand, when it's time to adapt and change course. Tim Connors, legendary Silicon Valley venture capitalist. He's been a venture capitalist for a long time in Silicon Valley, behind a lot of very successful companies. So I said to Tim, what is an entrepreneurial mindset, Tim? And he said, well, it describes people who have outsized smarts and goodness and grit. There comes the grit thing again. And these are people who cannot imagine not spending their life solving the problems about which they care most deeply. Well, that was really interesting. He said an entrepreneurial mindset has to do with, identifying the problems you really care about, and that you can't imagine any better way to spend your time than to try to solve those problems. I always say that many great startups begin with a founder who notices a problem worth solving, right? And then it's also said that the great entrepreneurs are the ones who fall in love with solving that problem, meaning that they become obsessive about solving that problem. And I think Tim's definition for us of an entrepreneurial mindset kind of puts his finger on that. David Weekley, serial entrepreneur. David has started, I don't know, 5 or 6 successful companies in Silicon Valley. He sold 2 of them to Facebook. He sold 1 of them to Google. And I said to David over a delicious taco at Sancho's Taqueria, I said, David, what is an entrepreneurial mindset? And David said, it's an understanding that the world is both changeable and imperfect, coupled with the resolve to improve it. Again, really interesting observation, right? That an entrepreneurial mindset means that you identify a problem in the world and you are resolved to solving it. You're going to create a startup that is going to make payments faster and smoother. You're going to create a startup that is going to cure cancer. You're going to create a startup that is going to provide artificial intelligence that will make global transactions smoother and more efficient. Something that you see in the world that needs to be improved, and you are going to dedicate your life to improving that thing. Olivia Moore is a partner at Andreessen Horowitz, which is the most famous venture capital firm on Sand Hill Road right now. And I said to Olivia, what is an entrepreneurial mindset, Olivia? And she said, entrepreneurial mindset is the excitement around building something new and the perseverance to navigate the many obstacles that come up in the process. So again, we have somebody mentioning perseverance and grit and the fact that being an entrepreneur is difficult. And so entrepreneurial mindset involves having perseverance, grit, tenacity to stick with it and make it a success. And lastly, I talked to my young friend, Chris Clark, CEO of a current Silicon Valley startup called Locale, recently raised $14 million in capital from Andreessen Horowitz. And they said, Chris, you youngster, what is an entrepreneurial mindset? He said, an entrepreneurial mindset is about efficient hypothesis testing and grit. So there's the grit part again, right? This has been a commonality, and the answers that I got is grit, perseverance, tenacity. And then Chris mentions efficient hypothesis testing. And what I love about this is that, we all have assumptions, right? So if we're going to launch a new product, we're going to launch a new service, we're going to launch a new company, we have assumptions about the marketplace. We have assumptions about what customers care about. We have assumptions about what the pricing should be. We have assumptions about what the go-to-market process should be. But great entrepreneurs know to, instead of relying on their assumptions, they know to test them, to test their hypotheses, to do rapid testing, rapid iteration. I think this is a really key thing, that great entrepreneurs know how to use the scientific method, which is, don't go on what you think you know. Instead, find ways to do experiments that will test your hypotheses. When I teach entrepreneurship at Stanford, one of the things I say is always be thinking, what is the smallest possible experiment that I could do right now that would provide me the greatest possible learning, right? And the entrepreneurs who have that mindset of, rather than going on my assumption, let me think of a small experiment that I could do that would test that assumption, test whether this is the right pricing, test whether this is the right market segment for this product. That the great entrepreneurs just kind of naturally do that. And lastly, talked to my friend Thane, and he mentioned this really crucial thing that nobody else mentioned, which is creating shared value. I think this is really interesting because it is definitely one of the things that is characteristic of entrepreneurs, is that, to be an entrepreneur, it's not just about wanting to make money for yourself. It's about wanting to create something of shared value, because, first of all, to be a successful startup, you need to provide something that customers value, right? Because the business model is the rationale by which an organization creates, delivers, and captures value. And we create value by solving a problem customers have, right? So first of all, there's creating shared value in the sense that the entire business model of our startup has to be about creating value for our customers. Secondly, as we hire employees and put together a great team for our amazing startup, we've got to pitch them on how they should come to work for us because of the shared value we're going to create together. Those early employees are going to have stock options, so we have to convince them that we're creating shared value, right? And lastly, we probably have to get investors in on this, and getting investors in on this is all about telling a story about shared value. So I think the fact that Thane identified the fact that great entrepreneurs, they're not just out for themselves. They intuitively know that building a great startup venture is all about creating shared value for customers, for investors, for early employees, for everybody involved. Okay, so having completed my Google and Taco parts of my research process, I then moved on to the book part of my research project. So there've been a lot of books written about these famous entrepreneurs today, right? Got Steve Jobs and Apple and Larry and Sergey, founded Google, Zuckerberg, who founded Facebook and now owns Instagram, WhatsApp, and he's off now on his metaverse thing. Jeff Bezos founded Amazon, Elon Musk, Tesla, SpaceX, The Boring Company, and soon Twitter. Mark Benioff transformed the software industry with Salesforce. So many books have been written about these famous entrepreneurs. And is there a particular mindset that they all share? Is there some particular mindset that has made these guys successful entrepreneurs? Well, I've read most of the books about these guys. And here's kind of more or less what the books say. So, by all accounts, Steve Jobs was a great communicator, right? He was great at articulating the vision. And to me, one of the most amazing things about Steve is the fact that, Steve, today we think of Apple as being a company that has great engineers, right? A company that creates products that are have deep engineering in them. But Steve had no formal training in engineering. Steve never even graduated from university. He wasn't an engineer, and yet he was able to put together some of the world's most talented teams of engineers. Steve wasn't a designer, had no background in design, and yet he was able to put together, design teams that still are considered today the greatest design teams in the industry. And so when you think about Steve Jobs' success, it wasn't that he was a great engineer, it wasn't that he was a great designer, it wasn't that he was a great businessman, didn't have an MBA. But what he was indisputably great at was articulating the vision. And by articulating the vision, he was able to recruit and retain top engineers. He was able to recruit and retain top designers. He was able to recruit and retain top MBAs, right? And so that single characteristic, that ability to be a great communicator, that ability to articulate a vision, really was Steve's superpower. And I love this quote from David Ogilvy, who's the kind of the father of modern advertising. And David Ogilvy said, in the modern world of business, it is useless to be an original creative thinker unless you can also sell what you create. And so I think that from the Steve Jobs example, one of the things that we can learn about the entrepreneurial mindset is that great entrepreneurs have that ability to articulate a vision and get others to follow. Zuckerberg, crazy. This guy launched a company at the age of 18 or 19 that is now one of the largest companies in the world. Owns Instagram and WhatsApp and all the rest. And so what is Mark's superpower? Well, interestingly, if you talk to Jim Breyer, who made the first venture capital investment in Facebook, what Jim will say is that he saw pitches from a lot of different entrepreneurs with social media startups. And the reason that he chose out of all of them, the reason that he chose to invest in Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook is that his meetings with Mark led him to believe that Mark had a natural understanding of the user that was way beyond anybody else. And so according to Jim Breyer, who made a whole lot of money as being the first venture capitalist to identify that Facebook, the Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook was a good investment opportunity, he says that the superpower that Zuckerberg has is the ability to really put himself in a user's shoes and understand a user. Okay, so Larry and Sergey founded Google, right? And I love this quote from Sergey where he says, "It's a romantic notion to think that you're going to have one brilliant idea and then everything is going to be great." Right? That's kind of the mythology of startup land, is that you have a great idea by Tuesday and you'll be a billionaire by Saturday. But it's not that simple. And Sergey says that execution and delivery is what's key. And so Sergey says that with regard to an entrepreneurial mindset, that it's not just about coming up with ideas, it's about being able to execute upon those ideas. Execution and delivery are what's key. Elon Musk. What can we say about Elon Musk? Well, Elon Musk said, I don't create companies for the sake of creating companies. I create them for the sake of solving big problems. So certainly one of the biggest problems the planet faces today is getting cars off of petroleum, getting automobiles off of gasoline, petroleum, right? That's a pretty big problem. Climate change is a pretty big problem. And so the fact that Elon Musk took on the challenge of making electric cars a mainstream product, that's a pretty big problem he took on. Or how about SpaceX, right? SpaceX is trying to solve the problem of how do we make commercial satellite launching more cost-effective and more efficient, and ultimately, how do we have interplanetary space travel? Well, that's a pretty big problem to take on. And how about his company, the Boring Company, which what they do is it's big machines that create tunnels underground in order to improve public transportation around the world. Because around the world, there are cities that could be improved by putting in better public transportation, but that requires creating tunnels under the existing cities, not an easy thing. And so his company, the Boring Company, is focused on that. And so what we can kind of learn from this particular quote and from Elon Musk is that what gets him up in the morning, what he's really passionate about, is not so much the making money. What he's really passionate about is solving big problems. That's what drives him. And so by extension, I think we can say that that is one of the things that is part of an entrepreneurial mindset, this desire, this passion for solving big problems. Bezos, Amazon. So famously, Amazon is obsessive about customers. They're obsessive about learning from customers, taking care of customers, figuring out small little things we can do to make the customer experience even better on Amazon. And I love this quote from Bezos where he says, "We see our customers as invited guests to a party, and we are the hosts. It's our job to make sure they are happy." And that kind of sums up the whole Bezos philosophy with regard to obsessing about customers. It's all about every single day, finding ways to make your product or service incrementally better for customers. And lastly, Mark Benioff, Salesforce. The tallest building in San Francisco now is the Salesforce Tower. This is a company that kind of came from nowhere. For a long time. Nobody had ever heard of Salesforce. And today they are the occupants of the tallest building in San Francisco, and they really revolutionized the entire enterprise software business. And Mark says that with regard to entrepreneurial mindset, you must always be able to predict what's next and then have the flexibility to evolve. And again, there's kind of a contradiction here, right? Because predict what's next, that's great. But you have to admit that you're probably not going to be exactly right in terms of predicting what's next. And so you need to have the flexibility to evolve when your prediction of what's next is slightly wrong. And this gets to the notion that part of an entrepreneurial mindset is agility, right? The ability to change course and change course quickly. And so the fact that Mark says that great entrepreneurs are able to predict the future, but because they know their prediction will be imperfect, great entrepreneurs also have the ability to be agile and adjust on the fly when their prediction is slightly off. So I think those are all pretty good observations that come from reading books about these famous entrepreneurs. So be great at articulating a vision. Definitely Steve Jobs' superpower. Fully understand users. That Mark Zuckerberg, for all of his faults, he is great at understanding what users care about. A focus on execution. Ideas are cheap. Execution is hard. Obsess about customers. At the end of the day, the only thing that matters to a business is customers, right? The number one cause of startup death is lack of customers. That's it. And so great entrepreneurs know how to obsess about customers from the very beginning. Be passionate about solving problems. Better yet, fall in love with solving a problem. If you find a problem that you absolutely fall in love with solving, that's probably a good place to create a startup around. And lastly, predict the future, but be flexible about it. So
Brett,
that moved. Yeah.
Brett,
Hi.
Can
Yeah.
I make a comment and a question at the same
Please.
time? Just
Please.
to break the ice a little bit. You mentioned a few items related to perseverance and execution, but I'd like to explore one aspect of the entrepreneurial mindset that, based on the examples that you gave, either from books or either from the conversations that you had with your colleagues, is purpose. Being in love with a problem, and it's pretty much related to having a purpose. And here we are with a lot of people from established companies, and I've seen a movement of existing businesses and brands trying to articulate a very engaging purpose. And do you believe that this type of movement, where companies are trying to articulate engaging and a little bit more embracing and scalable purposes for themselves? So just to give you an example of what I'm talking about is, perhaps you are a telecom company, but you would articulate that your purpose is to connect people, right? So this will make your business broader and more engaging. Do you believe this is a good way of for established company to foster entrepreneurial behavior and mindset? Yes or no, or maybe any comment?
Yes, for sure. That there's lots of evidence that that teams are motivated by a shared mission, right? So when a general leads his army into battle, it's about communicating the mission, the shared mission that we are all on, right? And so there's lots of evidence that shows that a company articulating that mission to employees in a way that makes everybody feel like they are part of the mission, that they want to be part of the mission, and they are going to be dedicated to that mission. Lots of evidence that tends to generate higher performing teams. Now, the problem, of course, is that some big companies create kind of mushy, feel-good mission statements that that don't really have all that much to do with their core business. So a telecom company can say, we're connecting the world and making them happier. But is that really kind of a mission that aligns with what they do and what employees will be motivated by? So I think that's the question. But absolutely right, that if you can create a shared mission around what we are out to accomplish, that it's a big part of creating a high-performing team. Yep.
Good. Thank you. Just wanted to break the ice a little bit. I know you have more to share, right?
I do. Yeah. I do. Awesome. So thank you for that question. It's a great question. So now I moved on to my favorite part of the process, which is having a glass of wine. And
the best part, right?
The best part, vino tinto, as they say in my country, right? So there's something pretty interesting. All this input that I got, all these thoughts that I got, right? But how do we weave all of that in together to create some sort of definition of an entrepreneurial mindset? And to start with, I thought we should define what entrepreneurship means, because we can't define entrepreneurial mindset until we first define what entrepreneurship means. And the definition that I like to use of entrepreneurship is from Howard Stevenson at Harvard Business School. And he said that entrepreneurship is the pursuit of opportunity without regard to resources currently controlled. So what that means is that I'm an entrepreneur. I see opportunity that I've decided I'm going to pursue. I don't currently have any money. I don't currently have a team. I don't currently have any resellers. I don't currently have any product developers, but none of that is going to slow me down. That I'm going to pursue that opportunity because I know that as an entrepreneur, I can put together the resources I need in order to pursue that opportunity. So that's the definition that I like to use of entrepreneurship. And so if that's the definition of entrepreneurship, then the definition of an entrepreneurial mindset must be a set of skills and mental habits that optimize the pursuit of opportunity, right? And so based on these conversations that I had and these readings that I did, these are some of the components of a mindset that optimizes the pursuit of opportunity. A focus on problems worth solving, building high-performing teams, articulating a clear vision, a comfort with uncertainty, because entrepreneurs are going to be going down a path that sometimes hasn't been explored before, and you have to be comfortable with that. Rapid hypothesis testing your assumptions. Always be thinking, what is the smallest possible experiment I could do right now that would provide me with the greatest possible learning? Perseverance, grit, tenacity. We heard that from all of our people who we interviewed, and a relentless obsession with customers. So I think all of those things are components to an entrepreneurial mindset, which I decided to define as a set of skills and mental habits that optimize the process of pursuing opportunity. But wait, turns out that if you go right now, if you go to Indeed.com, which is the largest job website in the US, place where big corporations post jobs that are open. If you go to Indeed.com right now and you do a search for entrepreneurial mindset, what's interesting is you will find almost 21,000 jobs available right now on Indeed.com, where the job post mentions entrepreneurial mindset. It mentions that they're looking to hire employees who have an entrepreneurial mindset. And that's kind of interesting, right? Because I think that historically we have thought of the mindset of an entrepreneur as being different than the mindset of a corporate manager, right? That, to be a corporate manager, you have to play by the rules, you have to, follow the plan, you have to not rock the boat. Or you could decide to quit your job one day as a corporate manager and become an entrepreneur, but being an entrepreneur is a whole different thing. So how is it that 22,000 companies today are looking to hire employees who have an entrepreneurial mindset? And the reason I think is that our definition of a high value corporate manager is different today than it once was. Once was that a high-value corporate manager was one who could write 5-year plans, one who was good at navigating internal politics, right? Doesn't deviate from the plan, always respects the way things have been done. Saying, yep, this is how we've always done it. Therefore, this is how we do it. Hires people who are easy to manage, because you don't want people who are thinking too much out of the box, because those people are difficult to manage and doesn't rock the boat. But today, I think when we think about a great high-performing corporate manager, today we think of somebody who embraces agility, responds to markets quickly. And it's a change in the market, it's a change in the way in which customers want to buy the product, it's a change to the competitive landscape. We want managers who can adapt to that change quickly. We want managers that can come up with creative solutions to problems, test assumptions, has resilience and grit, right? Because resilience and grit and perseverance, that's just as important for a good corporate manager as it is for an entrepreneur. And we want somebody who hires a high-achieving team. We want somebody who's not afraid to hire employees who are creative thinkers, employees who think out of the box, employees who might even be smarter than they are. And so I think part of what we've discovered is that the entrepreneurial mindset, a set of skills and mental habits that optimize the process of pursuing opportunity, I think what we found is that today is a high-value mindset, both for entrepreneurs and also for corporate employees. So maybe we could change it from entrepreneurial mindset. Maybe we could change it to successful mindset, right? Because all of these things are going to be of value to you and your career, whether your career is with a large global corporation or whether your career is as an entrepreneur. Because global companies today are operating in fast-moving markets, right? And they want to hire managers who are good at pursuing opportunity, articulating vision, assembling teams, testing hypotheses, solving problems, and obsessing about customers. That's what big companies want today. And so the reality is that while we think of entrepreneurial mindset as being something that you'll need if you're going to create a startup, fast-growing global companies today also want to hire managers with an entrepreneurial mindset, because all of those things that would allow you to be successful running a startup are also the things that will benefit large global companies today. And so I think we can replace this vision of your job, your career path as being either a boring corporate manager or you could be an entrepreneur. I think we could replace that vision with the fact that regardless of whether you want to be a highly successful corporate manager or an entrepreneur, that these elements that we've talked about today are elements that will serve you well. So those are some of my thoughts, and now I'd love to hear from you guys about what do you think are the components to a entrepreneurial mindset or a successful mindset in general.
So good. I'll open now for questions, and before we do that, I would like to make a first question for you, just so while people articulate their questions in the audience. And this question would be related to the ability to execute. We talked earlier this morning about how execution is important in terms of having and I think you started talking about communication, right? So the first way of starting a good project is the ability to communicate. What would you add to the skill of communication? What else do you think it takes to be an entrepreneur?
So I'm fond of the expression that to win, you have to think in the future. To survive, you have to think in the present. Meaning that as an entrepreneur or as a corporate manager, you need to be thinking about, where you want the company to be 2 years from now, 3 years from now, 5 years from now, right? But you also need to be thinking about, paying the rent this month to survive. And so, to win, you have to think in the future. To survive, you have to think in the present. And I think that great entrepreneurs have that ability to easily switch back and forth between the long term and the short term. So I can zoom out to look at the long-term vision and articulate to everybody, where do we want to be in 3 years? What is the vision that where we want to be in 3 years in terms of our company, our product, our service? And then zoom into what we need to do today in order to get there. How do we make sure that the small decisions we make today align with the big vision of where we want to be 3 years from now? And I think that there are some people who are naturally more comfortable talking about the big vision, but they're terrible about the details today. And there are some people that are really great at the details today, but they're not very good at that big vision part. And that I think that high achievers are able to zoom back and forth between those two comfortably. And this gets to the articulation of the team, because articulating that to the team is super, super important, right? The long-term vision of what we're all building together, and then what we need to do today in a way that aligns with that long-term vision. If you can articulate that clearly, then that tends to make for high-performing teams.
Really good. So now we have a very smart audience here. I think that we could build upon their experience and get some questions from the seminar participants.
Awesome.
Who would like to start? Oh, there's a quiet in the audience. Yeah, Christina?
Hi, Brett.
Hey.
Hey, I was writing down the characteristics from the books that you told us, and I was thinking about when we are an entrepreneur, or when we are in charge of being an entrepreneur inside our companies, our bosses, or even ourselves, when we have our small company, our startups, we always try to be all these strong points that you gave us. What you think it's the turnkey point that we can see one of our most evident strong to say, oh, I'm like Steve Jobs, communication is my strong point. And because we are always being ai meu Deus, gente, cobrado, meu inglês falhou. Charged, sorry, to be all of that at the same time. So I am one of these persons. I'm always trying to be everything. And is the turnkey point to say, no, this is my way, my path. I don't know if you have an answer, so sorry if I was.
No, I think this is good, but so say, is your question realizing what you're good at and what you're less good at, or I'm not sure I understand the question.
Can I help you?
Yeah, please.
I think that what Christina mentioned is sometimes it's complicated for you to be that kind of a professional that would be going back and forth, as you mentioned, going to the future and being in the present, because sometimes you are charged of many different things at the same time, right?
Of course.
Yeah. Communicator, being a future person, being everything.
Yeah. You know, so how do you understand what is your own path, right? Because you can't be everything at the same time. Even all the examples that you gave us, they have certain characteristics that are peculiar of each one. How do you understand who you are, right?
So first of all, I think the long-term thinking, short-term thinking, that same framework can be applied to your own personal life too, right? That, that all of us need to think about where we want to be personally, where we want to be 5 years from now, and then make sure that what we're doing today aligns with that, right? So you guys right now, you are in a top university because what you're doing today at that top university aligns with where you want to be 5 years from now, right? You wouldn't be at Insper otherwise. The reason you are there doing your homework today is because it aligns with where you want to be personally in 5 years. So I think that's part of the answer, is just that successful people in general do this. And then I think also maybe somewhere in your question is the thing about being self-aware about which of these characteristics already come naturally to you, and which of these characteristics don't come naturally to you, but maybe you could work on them and get better at them. So some people are naturally great speakers, right? So some people who, standing up in front of a room and communicating a vision, there's some people who are just already good at that. But, but they're less good at some of these other things. And so I do think that kind of self-awareness, in other words, being aware yourself of what things you're strong at and what things you want to work on, is an important characteristic.
Can I add something about what you just said and about Christina's question, which I think was incredible? There's a Brazilian book. I don't know if this is an American book that they translated into Portuguese, or if it's a Brazilian book, that's called Discover Your Strong Points. I don't know people in the audience. In Portuguese, it's called Descubra seus pontos fortes, which I think it's very interesting because it's based on which are your strengths, right? Because sometimes we are very focused on, I'm not good at this, and you're trying to become good at things that you are naturally not good. But sometimes there's so many things that I'm so good at this, and I use that with my team a lot. It comes with a CD, which is very easy to use. And I say, so why do not try to highlight what you're good at, right? Because everybody have a strong point, right? And I think this is another way of discovering what's your own path, based on, oh, I'm good at this, so maybe I could explore. And I think companies and even startups, they need different profiles of people. One thing that Brad mentioned is, how do you build your team, right? Because if everybody is good at communicating, who is going to be the one who is more perseverant, who has a more focused skill on solving problems? Maybe you need different people. Right, and and I believe that there's space for everybody. So let me get one more question. Juliana, no, Elona, Luisa, you want to do? Or
hello, I have two quick questions. I don't know the answer is quick, but the question is quick.
Okay.
Regarding the innovation culture, once we are speaking about different mindsets of managers, once you are trying to hire them, you should have the innovation culture or a place that inspire people. So sometimes the big corps are not those profiles, and sometimes you hire a manager, different mindset manager, and you can't engage him. So what is your point of view for this path to hire those people? And the second question, I don't know if you want that I do now or you can answer the first one.
First, let me make sure I understand the first one. So the question has to do with how do you hire the right manager, and how do you know if they're not working out?
How do you engage them?
How do you engage them?
Yeah, considering the big corps that you have a traditional culture, you don't have a innovation culture. That's the point.
And so you want to engage them in what way?
To maintain them in the company.
I see. This is more of an HR question, right? How do we?
I think that maybe building upon Juliana's question is what will come first, right? Will you have entrepreneurial people in the company if the company does not have a culture? Or will you build a culture if you bring entrepreneurial people to the company?
Right.
And I'm going to help you with that, Brett.
Thank you.
I have a story about my childhood that is very metaphoric in terms of explaining this type of things. I had a fish tank when I was a kid, and it was working perfectly, right? So think about the fish tank as the company. And then we went on a boat during the weekend, and I caught this very small fish that was different from all the other fish that I had in my fish tank. And I said, oh, that's so wonderful. I'm going to take this fish back home, and I'm going to put that fish in my fish tank. And when I put the fish in my fish tank, he killed all the other ones, right? But it could be the different way. It could have been killed by the ones that were already in my fish tank. So I think we'll never get the right answer for that. Maybe bringing new people is a way of changing the culture, right? Bringing new fishes, I would change the ecosystem of my fish tank. And this is a way of thinking about bringing people with entrepreneurial mindset within your company, maybe can make it change, right? But at the same time, if the environment is not good at all, you bring that people, new people, and they're gonna live. So there's no right and wrong about that. You can do it either way, but you have to measure what are the probabilities of you having success. But at the same time, you can change some triggers about incentives, about processes, about the way you pay people, about the way you measure the performance of people. So then you can make your tank be more favorable for the ones that you're bringing in. You had another question, right? The second one. Go.
Yes. The second one is about the open innovation. I work with startups, so I have many criteria to understand what startup make fit with us. But regarding the point that you said about shared values, what's your recommendation for considering these in the criteria I already had? How can I see if the startup has same values that we have? It's kind of subjective. It's not, for me, it's not something like, how can I bring to practical way, you know?
Yeah, so how do you currently do it? You must interview them, you have meetings with them, and you decide on some level whether or not you think that their values align with yours, right? It's what you're currently doing. And so you're asking, you know, kind of how to put a framework around that to do it more efficiently, effectively. So, yeah, so I mean, with any partnership, you know, alignment of incentives is what matters, right? That the partnership will be a success if we are aligned with regard to what we are incented to do. And this kind of comes back to your previous question too, which is the way to make a company more innovative is to change the incentive structure. So a guy named a Harvard Business School professor named Clayton Christensen wrote a terrific book called The Innovator's Dilemma. And the book, The Innovator's Dilemma, is about, why is it that innovation almost never comes from big incumbent companies? Innovation almost always comes from small startups. So, the current fintech revolution didn't happen from the big existing banks, right? Because the big existing banks didn't do any innovation. They didn't want to do any innovation. So fintech all came from startups, and the same with, the personal transportation industry wasn't revolutionized by the taxi companies. It was revolutionized by a startup named Uber. And so Clayton Christensen's book, The Innovator's Dilemma, examines, why is this? Why is it that large companies are very seldom able to create genuine innovation? And one of the conclusions it comes to is that the incentive structure within large companies is such that managers are incented to grow revenues and market share for existing lines of product, right? And so their bonus every quarter or their bonus every year is based on the revenue and market share for the existing products and services that they manage. And so there's absolutely no incentive to create innovation, because innovation usually means that you're going to take a short-term hit on revenue. So if you innovate the way in which you do something, that probably means that the revenues from that product line are going to go down a little bit because of the changes that we're making, or even that we're coming up with a new innovation that disrupts existing lines of product, right? And so why on earth would a manager possibly want to hurt his bonus this year by embracing innovation that is going to disrupt the current lines of business? And so basically the conclusion of Clayton Christensen's The Innovator's Dilemma is that the incentive structure at large companies is anti-innovation, and that companies cannot become more innovative until they change their incentive structures.
Really good. And I think it was very insightful what you just said, because it connects with your question in a way that, and I share that opinion that just brought Brett. Usually you are not very associative when you think about the corporate manager, right? It's like perhaps you will have the tendency to look outside and see the partnership as a potential threat, right? So related to entrepreneurial people are more likely to be associative and see, so why not partnering? Why not bringing a new partner to the company? And the corporate manager will say, so this guy is gonna threat me. If I bring him, perhaps I'll lose space, right? So being more associative, and how can you understand that you're not doing it alone? So for me, this is the main principle of open innovation, right? If you have the notion that it's very difficult to solve all the problems that your company needs to solve alone. And so this is why the corporate manager would need to be more associative, more and humble about this is not going to threat my space in the company if I search help outside the company. It's a change of mindset as well. Very well put. That this is a way to solve the dilemma of the innovator, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So on the topic of, I just want to say something really quickly about open innovation, because open innovation is a whole topic of its own, which is really an interesting one. And so I saw some research data recently that said that if you try to solve a problem on your own, you have about a 45% chance of success. If you try to solve a problem by putting together a team of people to help you solve the problem, and that team of people are people kind of like you, that you have a 50 to 55% chance of success. But if you try to solve a problem and you put together a diverse team, meaning a team of people who are looking at this from diverse points of view and diverse backgrounds, you have a 75% chance of success. And so this speaks to the benefits of open innovation, right? That by getting other people, perhaps from other companies and other sectors, in on this process of how do we create innovation that can solve new problems, that the open innovation methodology often has a higher percentage chance of success.
Good. Good data, right? Collaboration, leading, and diversity impacting, right, the outcomes of innovation. And so we are doing this session, Brett, here physically at the school and also online. And we prepared a Menti to collect feedback from the online participants and also from the people who are inside the seminar classroom. And while people take the time to collect the QR code and register their feedback about the session, I would like to take one last question for Brett, because we're running out of time. I don't know if anybody would like to formulate one more question in the audience. No? So I'll do it myself. So if you were about to give 2 or 3 advices for corporate managers on where to start to be more entrepreneurial. So a lot of people that are participating in our seminar are from corporate headquarters and business units. So if you would give 2 advices of the corporate managers to become more entrepreneurial, what would it be? Where to start?
So I think the 2 things that I would probably say are, so I personally feel as if public speaking skills are really important to anybody's career. I always tell young people that they should go get a job in sales first, because if your first job is in sales, you learn to get good at speaking to strangers, at articulating a point of view to strangers, at convincing people that your point of view is one worth thinking about. So first piece of advice I give anybody is that strong public speaking skills, strong presentation skills are super, super important. And it came up today in our discussion about, that was kind of Steve Jobs' superpower. So that's my first piece of advice, is that if you want to make sure that your career continues to go well, get really good at speaking and presenting. And then the second thing I think is this long-term, short-term thing that we just discussed, because I do think that most people are naturally either better at the long-term big vision thinking and terrible with daily details, or they're good with daily details and not particularly good with the big term vision. I think for the most part, people are born with one or the other. And so I think that kind of working on getting better at that is the second piece of advice that I would give you. And I think honestly that one of the reasons I feel that way is that in my life, I think that I'm naturally better at pitching the big vision, and I'm not as good at lighting up the daily details in a way that align with that big vision. And I think that as my career went on, I got better at being able to articulate the big vision to the team and then also manage the team's daily activities in a way that align well with that big vision. So those are my 2 thoughts.
Really good. And now let's see what are the feedbacks that we have from the Menti. Are we ready? Yeah.
Yes.
Tacos. I love tacos as well. You know, Brett, you need to come to São Paulo because there's a Mexican restaurant here, and I'm gonna make this opportunities, yes, strengths, prediction, deliver, communication. Is there communication coming from the, communication is a big thing. So people got your message, right? Yeah, really good. So now, Brett, I would like to thank you for the session and thank people who are following us from in our YouTube channel. It was a really good conversation in this session. I think Anna might want to speak a little bit about the closing of the session, and we'll wait for you in Brazil. Now that you're already speaking Portuguese.
I look forward to having tacos with you in Sao Paulo.
Yeah. Not the same as in California, but it's the best. It's the closest that we get to Palo Alto at Vila Olímpia.
I will look forward to it.
Thank you, Brett, to join us early morning, and see you in Brazil next time, okay?
Terrific. I look forward to it.
Bye. Ciao.
Bye-bye.